Today's video is about taking advantage of general aviation for recreational purposes. Doing something fun because you have the capability to fly there and back in a small private plane. So come along today as my friend and I take this Cessna 182 across California and into Arizona to attend the AOPA Buckeye Fly-In. You can see what we encountered along the way and get a taste for some of the fun of the event itself. For me, these journeys are not just about the destination plans, but also getting there and back. Flying is a challenge, and it's not very forgiving of errors, but I really enjoy the mental challenges and dealing with the variables along the way. Our plan was to depart on Friday morning, but we had some weather we had to dodge. Pre-trip planning showed the clouds lifting around 10 a.m. from our departure airport in Placerville, California. Our trip to the Phoenix area would cover 570 nautical miles with approximately 4 hours, 30 minutes of flight time if we went direct. We planned to stop for fuel in Bakersfield just to give us a break and ensure extra fuel was on board for any weather contingencies. As I departed my house and traveled up to the Sierra foothills toward the airport, I could see that Placerville was enveloped in fog. The closer I got, the more cold and rain I encountered, and at this point it didn't look good for flying, but we needed to get to Buckeye, Arizona Airport by 5 p.m. because the runway closed for the air show at that time and no night flying was allowed while the event was happening. As long as we got off the ground by 11, we had time to make it. We packed for up to 3 nights of camping as we didn't know exactly when we would return. We knew it could get cold during desert nights, so of course we needed appropriate gear to keep us warm. Since we were flying the 182, we had lots of space. We were able to spoil ourselves with a large cooler, real pillows, and some foam sleeping pads. We anxiously waited and watched as the fog teased up by lifting a little bit, then rolling back in. We watched the weather on our phones and knew that just west of us it was clear and flyable. We decided that the only way we could make Buckeye before they closed was to try to go direct, so we filled the gas tanks up to the brim and waited for the start of the 4+ hour flight. We had plenty of places to divert to along the way if the winds shifted. Unfortunately, the fog didn't lift at 10 a.m. Finally, a little after noon, we were able to duck under the cloud layer and head west to clearer skies. Our journey was underway. We headed west from Placerville toward the Central Valley of California, and we were able to climb over the broken clouds to get above for a clear view. We quickly got on flight following with air traffic control. Passing over Fresno and heading south through the Central Valley, we climbed up to 11,000 feet to stay clear of the cloud layer below us. We worked our way south past Bakersfield and then turned west to head toward Arizona. The clouds mostly dissipated as we crossed the southern Sierra Ridge through the Gorman Pass into the Joshua Approach airspace. During this whole leg, we had a strong tailwind, and at one point, we saw 194 miles an hour over the ground. This headwind made this long-distance journey much faster, and we still had a chance of making our 5 p.m. cutoff. As we approached Palmdale, air traffic control alerted us to an aircraft approaching from our 4 o'clock and overtaking us at the same altitude. Once we saw it, our jaws dropped in amazement. This plane was a World War II-era B-25 Mitchell, gleaming in the sun and passing us like we were standing still. We thoroughly enjoyed being smoked by this majestic beast from the past, and we were able to talk to the pilots later at the show and swap some stories. Past Palmdale, we enjoyed scenic views of the Angeles National Forest and the clouds smothering Mount San Antonio peaks at 10,000 feet. We continued west to the Big Bear area and Sugarloaf Mountain and into the high desert plains of Joshua Tree National Park. As we flew over, we were constantly thinking about the wind flows over and around these rocky peaks. We think of wind flows in the same way water flows around rocks, so we envisioned the wind coming up and then down each of these rocky formations. With the significant tailwind we were riding, we were continually going up and down the waves of wind crossing the terrain, even though we were thousands of feet above. As we got within 50 miles of our destination, Buckeye, Arizona Airport, we heard another aircraft request a diversion as Buckeye Airport was closed. Turns out Arizona time is 1 hour ahead of Pacific time, so we did not make the 5 p.m. Mountain Time cutoff. We had to divert to Wickenburg to the north and figure out our sleeping arrangements there. Well, unfortunately, we forgot about the time change, and we're going to camp here for the night. Find a place to throw up our tent and spend the night. We'll fly into Buckeye in the morning. As we enjoyed a beautiful sunset at the Wickenburg Airport, we chatted with the other diverted pilot and also a few locals at their hangars. Hearing of our predicament, one local pilot was kind enough to let us sleep in his hangar for the night. After setting up camp, we ventured out for dinner. So we're stuck here in Wickenburg Airport. Now we're trying to find an Uber driver and seeing if we can get someone to come pick us up way out here at this airport and bring us into town. So the adventure continues, never a dull moment. We finally found an Uber driver, and after dinner we had a restless sleep in the cold desert. Early to rise, we packed up and headed down south to Buckeye. Although it wasn't Oshkosh crowded, there was some traffic we had to navigate with to make the entry into the Buckeye airport. After an uneventful landing, we taxied to our camping spot, set up camp, then started walking to enjoy the event. Our first task was to register so we could get access to the AOPA VIP tent. Since we were early on the busiest day, we spent a bunch of time waiting in line to register. This is a good time to mention that AOPA really took care of their members during this event with water, snacks, some meals, and even a few goodies we could take back home with us. There were a number of vendor booths in this area to check up on the latest gear and some great deals offered for attendees. Once we got our VIP wristbands, we walked the flight line to head back to the VIP tent for the midday show and lunch. On one side was the airplanes that were flying in the air show, like this Yak, a modified Pitts, and this Bearcat. On the other was a range of plane vendors showing off new planes that you could dream about or maybe even purchase, like the Arion Lightning, the Tucano, or the Sting high wing or low wing variant. Of course, they all looked fantastic. We made it to the AOPA VIP tent just in time for lunch and the Matinee air show. Let me give you a flavor for this air show with a small sample of the sights and sounds. There was much more, but you will have to attend to see it all. After the air show, we walked back toward the parking area and enjoyed looking at all the cool planes that flew into the event. Of course, I had to record this T-28 bumping by. Now let's briefly check out some of the cool planes in the parking area. Now it's back to the main event, the evening air show. The crowds gathered for the grand finale and the kids started congregating at the front fence to get a close-up view of the action. The performance started before sunset and went on into the dark evening. This is but a taste, but you really need to see this in person. Let's get a peek now. Frankly, the overall event. After a tiring day, it was time to head back to the tent crash for the night and get ready for the long trip home tomorrow. After another restless night, I quietly left the tent to watch the sunrise. The quiet tranquility was a stark change from the excitement yesterday. Eventually, the parking lot came alive as others started breaking down camp as well. Although I wasn't the first plane to leave, the engine start broke the morning silence as we taxied toward the runway. The weather predicted clear skies all the way to Northern California. Since we had a tailwind heading home, we needed to stop for fuel, so we headed west toward Bakersfield. Our ground speed was a much more modest 137 miles per hour across western Arizona. We turned north over the Gorman Pass and descended into Bakersfield Muni for gas and hopefully an early lunch. We landed at Bakersfield Muni and it was pretty quiet at 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. After figuring out where the quote Mexican restaurant was on the field, we discovered it was closed until 11 a.m. As we were standing in the parking lot of this nondescript commercial looking building, one of the staff opened the door and asked if we wanted to come in a little early. He only spoke Spanish, but we entered into this incredible oasis called Memento Mori Cevicheria and Mexicali Lounge. It is worth visiting here just to see the artwork. The meal was fantastic and was much different than our expectations of a dive lunch place. I hope to come here again later in the day when we aren't the only customers. I'll bet this place is hopping after 8 p.m. But for us, we needed to head north to beat the possible weather. The skies looked clear as we passed over Fresno, but our Garmin was showing precipitation between us and Placerville. The sunlight streamed through the clouds, lighting up the emerging spring green of the Central Valley. The foothills of the Western Sierra Range are a gorgeous backdrop to Northern California flying, and we always enjoy seeing this natural beauty. We passed through very light precipitation and had a great landing at Placerville Airport, which is the home of the famous Skywagons and Mark Pilkington, which is a great channel, so if you like planes, be sure to check out his YouTube channel. It always feels good to be back home. As you saw, this is quite an adventure, and it didn't quite turn out as planned. But you know what? That's okay. The journey is the reward. And I hope you enjoyed this Silva adventure, and I hope you'll follow along with me in future Silva adventures. Please be sure to subscribe so that I show up in your video feed. And if you enjoyed this content, I'd really appreciate you clicking that like button. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you again on the next Silva adventure.